The air in the conference room was thick with the scent of stale coffee and cheap ambition. I sat perfectly still, my hands clasped in my lap, a professional smile plastered on my face. It was a mask I had perfected over 4 years at Gravora Group, a carefully constructed facade of pleasant cooperation that hid the churning gears of my analytical mind and the simmering frustration that came with being the most competent person in a room full of men who refused to see it. Across the polished mahogany table, Tyler Mason was practically vibrating with a smug energy that was almost physically repulsive. He caught my eye for a fraction of a second, a flicker of something triumphant in his gaze before he turned back to Director Hamilton, our department head, who was puffing out his chest like a proud pigeon. "Women just don't think strategically," Director Hamilton boomed, his voice echoing in the cavernous room. He wasn't looking at me, but the words were a volley of poison darts aimed directly at my heart. He clapped a heavy hand on Tyler's shoulder. "That's why we need leaders like you, Tyler, driving our merchandising initiatives. Real visionaries." He shook Tyler's hand, a firm, man-to-man gesture of corporate consecration. The room erupted in a smattering of polite, obligatory applause. I sat there, stunned. My face burned with a mixture of rage and disbelief, so potent it felt like it might melt my skin. The presentation Tyler had just delivered, the one that had earned him a promotion to senior merchandising manager, was flawless. It was flawless because I had written every single slide. I had analyzed every data point. I had created every single recommendation. It was my merchandising strategy. The same strategy that had already increased our regional sales by an unprecedented 20% over the past quarter. The same strategy one had spent months developing, pouring my heart, soul, and every ounce of my analytical prowess into. And now, I was watching my male coworker, a man whose understanding of data was as deep as a puddle in a heat wave, bask in the glory of my work as if it were his own. I forced myself to maintain a professional smile, but inside, a cold, hard resolve was beginning to form. They had underestimated me, and they were about to learn the true cost of that mistake. My name is Simone Briggs, and I'm 31 years old. I've always been a numbers person. While other kids were playing with dolls, I was creating spreadsheets to track their inventory and market value. I graduated with top honors from Auburn University with a degree in business analytics, a field that felt less like a job and more like a calling. I saw stories in data, opportunities in spreadsheets, and growth in graphs. My cubicle walls at Gravora Group were a testament to my obsession, covered with charts, graphs, and consumer data that most people found mind-numbingly boring. But to me, they told stories of opportunity and growth. I could spot market trends before they exploded, a skill that should have made me invaluable. For the past 4 years, I had worked as a merchandising analyst for Gravora Group, one of the largest retail chains in the Southeast. I had climbed steadily, but the glass ceiling here was thick and reinforced with the steel of old-fashioned chauvinism. The senior leadership was a veritable old boys club, and I knew that to get ahead, I had to work twice as hard as my male counterparts just to be considered half as good. My mother had warned me about this my whole life. "You'll need to work twice as hard as men to get half the recognition," she'd say, a sad, knowing look in her eyes. I always thought she was being overly pessimistic, a product of a different generation. But sitting in that conference room, I realized she had been preparing me for this exact moment. The opportunity had come 2 months earlier. Our department head had asked for volunteers to develop a new merchandising approach for the upcoming holiday season, our most critical sales period. I had jumped at the chance. The senior analyst position, a role that had been dangling in front of me for months, was finally within reach. This was my chance to prove I was ready. I immersed myself in the project. My life became a whirlwind of late nights fueled by black coffee, surrounded by mountains of data. I analyzed consumer behavior patterns, dissected competitor strategies, and tested hypotheses in 3 different markets. It was grueling, but I was in my element. The strategy that emerged was, I knew, groundbreaking for Gravora Group. It was nuanced, data-driven, and innovative. 3 weeks into my research, Tyler had approached me. He was all charm and disarming smiles, a reputation that had carried him far further in the company than his actual skills. "Simone," he'd said, leaning against my cubicle wall, "I hear you're working on the holiday project. I'm so impressed. I'd love to collaborate, maybe learn from your research methods." I was naive enough to believe him. I thought he was genuinely interested. Wanting to be a team player, I shared everything with him: my consumer surveys, my competitor analysis, my pricing strategies, even my proprietary presentation template. He would ask endless questions, probing for details with a feigned curiosity that I now recognize as a calculated extraction of information. He started recording our meetings, claiming he wanted to review the strategies later to fully understand them. He started dropping my terminology and insights into his own conversations with management, testing the waters, claiming them as his own nascent ideas. I noticed, but I dismissed it as him being an enthusiastic collaborator. The irony was suffocating. Then, a week before the presentation, he made his final move. "Simone," he said, his expression a carefully crafted mask of sincerity, "your research is incredible, but my presentation skills are a bit stronger. For the good of the team, I think I should take the lead on delivering our findings to the board. It will make a better impression." Reluctantly, I agreed, but I made him promise to acknowledge my role in developing the core strategy. "Of course," he'd assured me with a warm smile. "This is our project." The presentation was a masterpiece of deception. He navigated my slides with an unearned confidence, answered questions with my pre-prepared notes, and accepted the board's praise without a single mention of my name. The only time I was acknowledged was when Director Hamilton delivered his sexist verdict on the strategic capabilities of my entire gender. My face burned with a mixture of rage and disbelief. My heart pounded a furious rhythm against my ribs, a drumbeat of betrayal. I felt a cold, hollow sensation settle in my chest, a void where my ambition and trust in the company used to be. But I forced myself to maintain a professional smile, a mask of serene composure that belied the storm raging within me. I clapped along with everyone else, my hands feeling disconnected from my body. As the meeting concluded and people filed out, congratulating Tyler on his brilliant work, I felt a shift inside me, a transformation I had never experienced before. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. I walked back to my desk in a daze, the sounds of the office muffled as if I were underwater. I sat down, staring at my blank computer screen, the reflection showing a stranger with a tight, brittle smile. Then my phone buzzed on the desk. A text from my old college roommate, Jasmine. "Hey, long time no talk. Just saw a job opening at Sunvale Studios for a senior strategic analyst. Sounded just like you. Thought you might be interested. They're making huge waves." Sunvale Studios, the fastest-growing retail chain in the Southeast. A company known for its innovative, data-driven approach. A company that was, I knew from my own research, one of Gravora Group's most significant and feared competitors. I sat in my car in the Gravora Group parking lot for a long time, trying to process what had just happened. The rage was still there, a hot, coiling serpent in my gut, but it was now overlaid with something else, a cold, crystalline clarity. This wasn't just about a stolen presentation or a missed promotion. This was about a pattern I had noticed but tried to ignore. The way my ideas somehow became team efforts when they succeeded, but remained solely mine when they needed refinement. The way my contributions were praised in private but rarely acknowledged in public forums. The way promising projects were mysteriously reassigned to male colleagues when they showed real potential. I thought about Tyler's smug face and Director Hamilton's dismissive words. I thought about my mother's warning. And in that moment, in the sterile silence of my sedan, I made a decision. I was done playing their game. That evening, I submitted my application to Sunvale Studios. Along with my resume, I included a portfolio that included detailed, anonymized documentation of every significant project I had worked on at Gravora Group. I was careful to include only work that was definitively mine, but the portfolio clearly demonstrated the depth of my strategic thinking and analytical capabilities. It was a gamble, but I had nothing left to lose here. 2 days later, I received a call requesting an interview. The call from Sunvale Studios came on a Thursday morning while I was reviewing quarterly sales reports in my cubicle. The voice on the other end belonged to Director Margaret Foster, head of merchandising strategy for the fastest-growing retail chain in the Southeast. Her tone was professional but warm. "Your portfolio demonstrates exactly the kind of innovative thinking we're looking for," she said. "Would you be available for an interview next week?" The interview took place at Sunvale's regional headquarters, a modern, light-filled glass building that felt worlds apart from Gravora Group's outdated, stuffy corporate complex. Director Foster met me in the lobby, and I was immediately struck by her directness and intelligence. Unlike the meetings at Gravora, where presentations often devolved into political maneuvering, our conversation focused entirely on strategy, data, and results. "I'm particularly interested in your consumer segmentation methodology," Director Foster said, reviewing my portfolio. "The depth of analysis here suggests you understand not just what customers are buying, but why they're making those choices." I walked her through my approach, explaining how I combined traditional demographic data with behavioral analytics to create detailed customer profiles. As I spoke, I could see her genuine engagement with the concepts. She asked follow-up questions that demonstrated she understood the complexity of what I was describing. At Gravora Group, this kind of analysis led to a 20% increase in regional sales, I explained. But I believe the methodology could be even more effective with a company that's willing to move quickly on insights. Director Foster smiled. "That's exactly what we need. We're expanding into 3 new markets over the next 6 months, and we need someone who can develop merchandising strategies that will give us a competitive advantage from day one." The conversation continued for nearly 2 hours. By the end, I knew this was where I belonged. 3 days after my interview, Director Foster called with an offer that exceeded my wildest expectations. The position was Senior Strategic Analyst, with a direct reporting line to the executive team, a salary $30,000 higher than my current position, and a benefits package that included stock options that could prove extremely valuable as the company continued its rapid expansion. "We're prepared to offer you the position immediately," Director Foster said. "When would you be able to start?" I asked for the weekend to consider the offer, though I had already made up my mind. This was my opportunity to escape the toxic environment at Gravora Group. On Monday morning, I submitted my resignation letter to Director Hamilton. His reaction was exactly what I expected: surprise, followed by attempts to convince me to stay, followed by barely concealed irritation when I refused to reconsider. "I hope you realize you're making a mistake," he said, leaning back in his chair with a dismissive expression. "Sunvale Studios is still unproven in this market. You're leaving a stable position for an uncertain future." "I appreciate your concern," I replied, maintaining professional composure despite wanting to point out that my stable position had become untenable the moment he promoted Tyler for stealing my work. "But I believe this opportunity aligns better with my career goals." Tyler's reaction was more complex when he heard about my departure. He made several attempts to meet with me, ostensibly to discuss transition planning, but clearly hoping to extract more ideas he could use after I left. "I hate to see you go," he said during one of these conversations, his voice laced with false sincerity. "We made such a great team. Are you sure there's nothing Gravora Group can do to keep you?" The audacity of his statement was breathtaking. We had never been a team. I had been his unwitting research assistant while he positioned himself to take credit for my work. But I simply smiled and redirected the conversation to practical transition matters. My last 2 weeks at Gravora Group were enlightening in ways I hadn't expected. Without me to provide analytical support, Tyler's limitations became apparent to anyone paying attention. During my final week, I received an unexpected visit from Bethany Coleman, one of the senior analysts who had always been supportive of my work. She closed my cubicle door and spoke in low tones. "I want you to know that some of us saw what really happened with that presentation," she said. "Tyler has been trying to replicate your analysis methods for his new projects, but he clearly doesn't understand the underlying principles. It's becoming obvious that he didn't develop that strategy himself." Her words were validating, but they also highlighted a larger problem at Gravora Group. The company culture allowed people like Tyler to succeed through appropriation rather than innovation, while systematically undervaluing the contributions of people like me. My first month at Sunvale Studios exceeded every expectation I had harbored. The company culture was everything Director Foster had promised: collaborative, data-driven, and focused on results rather than politics. I was given immediate access to the resources I needed to develop comprehensive merchandising strategies, and my recommendations were implemented quickly, rather than being subjected to endless committee reviews. Within 3 weeks, I had completed a detailed analysis of Sunvale's expansion opportunities and identified several key markets where we could gain significant competitive advantages. My research revealed that our primary competitors, including Gravora Group, were following outdated merchandising models that failed to account for changing consumer preferences and demographic shifts. The most interesting discovery came when I analyzed Gravora Group's recent performance in markets where Sunvale Studios was considering expansion. Despite Tyler's promotion and his supposed strategic leadership, their quarterly results showed declining sales in 2 of their 3 most important regions. The holiday merchandising strategy that had been so successful under my guidance was failing in its implementation, suggesting that Tyler lacked the analytical skills necessary to adapt the approach to changing market conditions. Director Foster was particularly interested in this analysis. Your analysis suggests that Gravora Group is vulnerable in several key markets, she said during one of our weekly strategy meetings. Do you think their recent strategic initiatives will improve their competitive position? I chose my words carefully, not wanting to appear vindictive, while still providing an honest, professional assessment. Based on the data I've reviewed, their current approach lacks the analytical rigor necessary to maintain market share against more agile competitors. Their strategies seem to be based on outdated assumptions about consumer behavior. What I didn't mention was that those strategies were based on my original research, but Tyler's incomplete understanding of the underlying principles was leading to poor execution. He had the surface-level presentation skills to impress executives, but he lacked the deep analytical foundation necessary to adapt strategies to changing market conditions. Then came the real opportunity for revenge, delivered on a silver platter. During my research into supplier partnerships, I discovered that several of Gravora Group's most important suppliers were becoming frustrated with the company's inconsistent strategic direction and declining sales performance. One supplier in particular, Bright Hollow Labs, had been expressing concerns about their partnership with Gravora Group and was actively seeking alternative retail partners for their premium product lines. Bright Hollow Labs manufactured high-end home goods and seasonal merchandise that represented nearly 15% of Gravora Group's total inventory value. Losing the supplier would create significant gaps in their product offerings and force them to find alternative sources at potentially higher costs. More importantly, if a competitor gained exclusive access to Bright Hollow's products, it would represent a substantial competitive advantage. I spent several days developing a comprehensive proposal for partnering with Bright Hollow Labs, outlining how Sunvale Studios' analytical approach to merchandising could maximize the value of their product lines. The proposal included detailed market analysis, consumer preference data, and projected sales figures that demonstrated our ability to effectively promote and sell their merchandise. The proposal was compelling enough that Director Foster authorized me to reach out to Bright Hollow Labs directly to explore a potential partnership. The call to Bright Hollow Labs came on a Tuesday morning in March, exactly 2 quarters after I had left Gravora Group. I had spent weeks preparing for this conversation. When I reached the Director of Business Development, Patricia Weatherby, her response was immediately enthusiastic. "We've been watching Sunvale Studios' expansion with great interest," she said. "Your growth metrics are impressive, and we're always looking for retail partners who understand the strategic value of premium merchandise." I walked her through our consumer analysis, explaining how our demographic research had identified significant opportunities in the home goods market that traditional retailers were missing. The conversation flowed naturally from market analysis to partnership possibilities, and within 30 minutes, we had scheduled an in-person meeting for the following week. What made the conversation particularly satisfying was Patricia's unprompted commentary about their current retail partnerships. Without any prompting from me, she began expressing frustration with Gravora Group's recent performance and strategic direction. Our partnership with Gravora Group has become increasingly challenging, she explained. Their merchandising decisions seem disconnected from market realities, and their sales performance has been disappointing across multiple product categories. We're concerned that their strategic leadership doesn't understand our customer base. The partnership agreement with Bright Hollow Labs was finalized 6 weeks later, and the announcement sent shockwaves through the retail industry. Sunvale Studios gained exclusive access to Bright Hollow's premium product lines, while Bright Hollow gained a retail partner capable of sophisticated market analysis and strategic merchandising. For Gravora Group, the loss represented a devastating blow to their inventory strategy and financial projections. I learned about Gravora Group's reaction through industry contacts and former colleagues who reached out after the announcement. According to Bethany Coleman, who still worked there, the executive team was in crisis mode, trying to understand how they had lost such an important supplier relationship. Director Hamilton had apparently demanded a full investigation into the circumstances surrounding Bright Hollow's departure, and Tyler was tasked with developing a strategy to win back the partnership. The irony was perfect. Tyler was being asked to solve a problem that his incompetence had helped create, using analytical skills he had never actually possessed. As I reflected on the transformation of my career over the past 8 months, I realized that Tyler's betrayal had ultimately been a gift. His theft had forced me to leave a toxic environment and find a company that valued my contributions. His incompetence was now proving, in the most public way possible, that he had never been capable of the strategic thinking he claimed to possess. In the end, talent had won over theft, and strategic thinking had triumphed over superficial charm, exactly as it should be in any industry that rewards actual competence. The success was professionally satisfying, but the personal vindication was even sweeter. Every percentage point of growth at Sunvale was proof that my methods were sound and my thinking was valuable. Tyler might have received credit for my work at Gravora Group, but the results spoke for themselves about who truly understood retail merchandising strategy. And that was the best revenge of all.